Hey people, it's Kieran from the Run Testers here, and today we're going to be doing a multi-tester review of this. This is the Coros Pace 2. It's the follow-up to the original Pace. It comes in at the same price, but for that you're going to get a lot more watch for your money.
Background on Coros. They're relatively new to this space. They started off by making cycling helmets, kind of connected cycling helmets, and then in 2018 we got the first Pace. So a couple of years later we now have the successor to that. It's priced at £180, $200, so that kind of puts it in the same kind of price range as the Garmin Forerunner 45 and the Polar Ignite. So myself, Kieran and Nick have all had this watch to kind of use, and we're kind of ready to talk about our thoughts, you know, whether it's a good running watch, whether it's good for the price, and whether you should buy it. So let's talk about design. Now, I've used the original Pace, Nick's used the original Pace as well, and I think we've been in agreement that it was undeniably aping the look and design of a Garmin watch. Now, with the new Pace 2, what you're getting is something that's smaller and significantly lighter. So it's moved from a 46mm case to a smaller 42mm case. So that is similar to what you get on the Forerunner 45 and the Forerunner 245. The lightness is something that really strikes you immediately. So it's 29 grams and it's lighter than those watches we've mentioned and something like the Polar Ignite. So when you get it on your wrist, it doesn't feel, you know, worryingly toy-like in the kind of lightness. It's just very comfortable. You kind of barely notice it's there, and it's generally been just a really nice watch to run with. In terms of navigation, you don't have a touchscreen display, but to be honest, you know, we're not fussed about that. You now only have 2 buttons as opposed to 4 buttons on the Pace, and kind of use is pretty straightforward. I think the most interesting is the twisty kind of crown that has kind of been present on Coros's more recent watches, and what that allows you to do is kind of twist to kind of scroll through screens. It's also used to unlock the screen, and it's a nice kind of addition. I imagine it'd be quite useful when you've got, you know, a pair of gloves on and it's a bit cold, or, you know, your hands are a bit sweaty, and it's just nice to use in general. In terms of the screen, you've got a 1.2-inch 240 by 240 resolution screen, so that's kind of similar to what you will get on a similarly priced Garmin, and similar actually to what you had on the Pace. Now, it's probably the weakest aspect, I think, of the watch in general in terms of the hardware. It's not the brightest. Generally the visibility is fine, but it would be nice to have something a bit brighter. You can't control the screen brightness. There's no settings for that. I think also kind of at night or kind of darker conditions when you need that backlight, I think you get something a little bit brighter on something like the Forerunner 45. Now, it's not impossible to see the screen with that light on. I just think you get something a bit sharper on the Forerunner 45.
I personally found the Coros Pace 2 screen to be a little bit dull and dim unless you had the all-day gesture backlight activated. But what I did like was the fact that you could invert those screens mid-run, so you can have your black on white stats that make it very easy to read those whilst you're running. So the Coros Pace 2 watch straps are interchangeable. They've got a quick release system here. The one that we tested was a nylon strap. It's a little bit like those Apple watch straps, only it's nowhere near as good. And actually, I know both Mike and I found that to be a little bit scratchy and a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not the most comfortable strap. And I think we definitely preferred the silicone strap for comfort and for the fact that you can't swim with a nylon strap. So the silicone strap actually is something we'd probably recommend that you opt for over the nylon strap.
So in terms of what you get from the Pace 2, it's actually a fair amount. So if you look at the sensors, you're getting built-in GPS with the GLONASS, BEIDOU satellite systems also supported, Galileo is going to be added in a future software update. Other sensors include optical heart rate monitor, the altimeter, which is something that you don't get on the Forerunner 45 and also the 245. You've also got an accelerometer for indoor tracking. There's a compass, gyroscope, thermometer, and And you've got dedicated screens to kind of show off those kind of pieces of information. So another thing that gives the Pace 2 big appeal is the fact that it offers ANT plus and Bluetooth connectivity. So that means you can pair additional sensors like heart rate monitor, chest straps, Coros's own running dynamics pod, and now the Stryd foot pod. So that brings running power to the Pace 2 as well. Coros promises to generate its own power metrics as well without additional sensor, which is quite interesting. You won't find that on watches at this price as well. When it's time to get running, you've got three main modes. You've got the outdoor running mode, treadmill running, and then track running. So the track mode is a new thing that Coros have added recently, where it's saying it can more accurately track your sessions on the track. Now, if you're hoping the Pace 2 can be a smartwatch as well as a running watch, well, it's pretty basic on that front. You're getting the ability to view notifications from your phone, but it's pretty basic in terms of that support. You can kind of view it and then kind of dismiss it ultimately. You're not getting payment support, you're not getting apps, you're not getting music controls. As I say, it's one of the weaker aspects from a software point of view, but if you can live without that stuff, the smartwatch notification stuff is basic, but it works.
So a couple of things I always look for in running watches, kind of features that I use a lot, are navigation and structured workouts. So it's worth saying the Pace 2 doesn't do any kind of navigation features. Coros has basically kept that for watches like the Apex up, so kind of they're more nearer £300 watches. And that's fair enough. You don't see a lot of navigation features on watches below £200. It's just a bit disappointing because they put so much on this watch. It would have been amazing if they chucked that in as well. It does do structured workouts though, and you can set these up in the app to be not just like basic intervals. You can do kind of several steps of workouts with different lengths of interval, different lengths of rep, distance based on distance or time, and you can also put in targets based on heart rate or pace. And I do think Coros watches in general, including the Pace 2, are quite good at showing a steady pace on a rep. So if you're looking to run, say, a kilometre at 3:45, it will give you like a little target zone on the watch face during your structured workout to help you, roughly pace your rep. To help you pace your rep correctly. And yeah, it's pretty easy to do with this watch. So that's a big plus.
So battery life is a big headline here, and the Coros Pace 2 has a whopping 30 hours in full GPS mode. That's up 5 hours on the original Pace. It also extends up to 60 hours in an Ultra Max low GPS mode, and that's up 10 hours on the original Pace. With general usage, on paper you're going to get 20 days with the Coros Pace 2. Now that is actually 10 days down on the original Pace, so a little bit less time in general usage, but still those battery figures are pretty much unparalleled at this price range. So you're going to have to spend an extra £70 to get a GPS battery life that's near that from a rival brand. And the closest Garmin you're going to get to that battery life is actually the Garmin Forerunner 945, and that's a whole £300 more expensive. So it's one thing on paper, but how does it bear up in the real world? Well, a 1 hour run with full GPS on clocked 3% battery life, while a 3 hour run clocked 11%. So that would bear out the 30-hour claims that Coros make about the full GPS battery life. In Ultra Max mode, we did a 1 hour run and it clocked 2% battery life. And that actually, by our calculations, would bring you in about 10 hours short of the overall 60-hour battery life, though we didn't get a chance to put that fully to the test. Overall, in the tests that I did personally, I got 16 days worth of usage, general usage, with 7 hours full GPS activity in that period. And that was with a heart rate set to record every 10 minutes, which is the default setting that you'll get on the Coros Pace 2 out of the box, rather than the 24/7 that comes with some other watches. So to me, that 20 days claim based on that settings sounds to be bang on.
So I have the Coros Pace 2 set to take my heart rate continuously 24/7, which obviously impacts on the battery life. But even then, I'm getting through a lot of time with one charge. Like I get for around 10 days on a single charge, and this is taking into account I run almost every day. I will do supportive sessions like cycling, weight training. 10 days is really great. Like it's a lot more than you get on things like the Garmin Forerunner 45, the Polar Ignite. So even if you want that heart rate monitoring on all the time, which I think you should, it's a good feature on the watch, you're still going to get through well over a week, probably even 2 weeks if you train a little less than me on a single charge.
So beyond how it performs with battery life, the other really interesting feature on the Coros Pace 2, and actually Coros watches in general that you don't get elsewhere, is you can dive into the battery stats and you can see which of the features are using the most battery life. You can see how much you've used since your last charge, when your last charge was, and you can really get into detail on how you're using the battery life of the device. It's just a really nice, useful tool that's a really lovely addition to this particular watch. So in the heart rate test runs that I did, I put the Pace 2 up against the Polar H10 chest strap and occasionally up against the Garmin Fenix 6 Pro optical wrist sensor. Now what I found was actually that in the post-run stats, the average reads and the max reads tended to almost match beat for beat across those devices. But at mid-run, it was a different story. I found that the Pace 2 actually was about 10 seconds sort of lag behind. It would seem to eventually sort of catch up and hit the notes that those two devices had hit before, but it just seemed to take a little bit longer to get there. So there was a little bit of lag on that.
I wasn't absolutely wowed by the heart rate accuracy on the Pace 2. Obviously all optical kind of wrist monitors have their problems, but I found this was probably laggier than most and other watches I've tested, including even the Coros Vertix, which I thought would be worse because it's such a big, heavy watch. It was laggy on like interval runs to the point that it would actually miss the entire spike on like a Stryd sometimes. And also at the start of runs, I found it took a while to actually find my heart rate accurately. It would be too low or too high for kind of 5 minutes. And if I was doing like a stop-start run with friends, every time I kind of stopped and restarted, it would have a bit of trouble picking up my heart rate accurately again. On the kind of steady runs or runs where I gradually increased the pace, it was pretty good though. It was within probably 5 beats, maybe 10 beats of a chest strap monitor at times. I'd still say wear a chest strap just for more accuracy, and it's obviously easy to pair to this watch because it has both ANT Plus and Bluetooth. We all found that the watch kind of connected to GPS satellites quickly, so that was all good. And I think accuracy was pretty good across the board. I tended to find actually the Pace 2 would come out slightly short compared to a watch linked to a calibrated Stryd foot pod. Kieran found it ran slightly long, but I'm often running in a forest under tree cover, and there was no point that I thought it was really bad, the accuracy. It wasn't so far off that I'd have substantial concerns. The watch also has a track run mode, which you can set the exact lane you're running in to try and get kind of more accuracy on the track. I did a kind of an 8-lap kind of rep where I was alternating 85 second, 75 second pace. So that's 3.2k, and the Pace 2 gave me 3.25k. I can't say for sure I was always hugging the exact perfect 400 meter line, so that's really pretty impressive. I still have a little bit of trouble seeing the point of this track mode, just because if you're on a track, you know exactly how far you've run and you're pacing it on, using the markings on the track rather than your watch, or you should be in my mind anyway. You just use the watch as a timer. But it's quite nifty to have it there if you want, that Strava upload of your track session to be more accurate than most.
Now, another thing that the Pace 2 has that a lot of other watches at this price point don't do is a barometric altimeter. And what that's supposed to do actually is help make your elevation stats more accurate. So the boys challenged me to go out and do a little bit of, to find some hills, shall we say. And I did. I went out and I did 1,500 meters of climbing and descending on a coastal path in the UK. Some of it I did doggies up and down a 100-meter hill. And what I found actually is the Coros Pace 2 versus the Garmin Fenix 6 Pro, under red, it came in shorter in terms of the overall elevation gain and also the descent. Which is correct is a little bit tricky to kind of find out, but it did read a little bit shorter.
When it comes to training insight, the Coros generally across the board keep it quite pleasingly simple in my view. There's this kind of simple stamina reading that you get during a run and after a run that just ticks down from 100%. So afterwards you can see if you need, and that kind of links to how many days recovery that it recommends. So you can see this run took me from 100 to 60%. Watching it over the rest of the day, it ticks back up to when I can run again if I want to be at 100%. During a run, you also get the training effect in terms of anaerobic and aerobic effect, which is rated out of 5, and these kind of tick up. So if you're logging a long, steady run, that's good for your aerobic fitness. The aerobic training effect will tick up, and if you're doing kind of hard efforts where you're above your threshold, then your anaerobic reading will tick up a bit as well. It's all fairly simple, quite easy to follow, done pretty well on the watch. In the app, you also get things like your VO2 max estimate, your threshold pace estimate, your lactate threshold estimate, and like kind of a general overall look at your training load. I don't think Coros is very good on that front, all that kind of stuff. The VO2 max estimate, is very different to my Garmin one. I couldn't really say which is accurate. Neither I'd expect to be brilliant from a watch. But the threshold pace on this is mad. Like, it's always had me down at something insane, like well under 3 minutes per kilometre as my threshold pace, which is just not true. I wish it was true. So yeah, things like that. I'm not all that impressed in that kind of thing. I think even in this bracket, you'll find some Polar watches do maybe a little bit better on training insight. Certainly once you get towards £300, Garmin watches are good on that front as well. But to be fair, at its price point, the Pace 2 does a pretty good job of providing some simple, insight into how hard you've worked and how much time you need to recover. But I will say use a chest strap if you're going to use all those features, because you do want the extra accuracy on things like stamina and training effect.
One other thing that I noticed when it comes to the training insights and smarts is that recovery times seem to be much shorter. The recommendations seem to be shorter with the Pace 2 rather than they were on the Garmin Fenix 6 Pro. So read into that what you will. Maybe the Pace thinks that we're made of stronger stuff than the Garmin, or maybe they're both really just guessing and not very accurate. So my verdict on the Coros Pace 2 is quite simple. I think this is an outstanding watch for the money. At that price point, you're getting so many training features, you're getting such a good battery life, and what you're getting essentially is a very, very simple watch to use. It is a little bit plasticky, it's not got the most kind of luxury design if that's what you go for, but actually if you're looking for a very simple, light, pared back watch in terms of the design, but one that has this huge suite of features, then this is really a go-to. Coros really are showing that they excel at this price point in terms of the value that they offer. And actually, bang for buck, I don't think you can buy a better watch out there right now.
So I think the Pace 2 is an absolutely brilliant watch at its price. It's really gives you just so much for £180 that it makes it very easy to recommend. And that battery life is just fantastic. It's better than a lot of what you'll find on watches in the £300 bracket, apart from Coros's own watches. Even heading up, it lasts longer than my Fenix does on a single charge. Phoenix does a lot more, but still, that's pretty impressive. I think kind of the key watches to compare it to in this kind of under sub £200 bracket are the Polar Ignite and the Garmin Forerunner 45. Now, I'd say both of them probably have slightly nicer designs for my money, but I'm not too fussed about that at this kind of price range. Both of them are much shorter battery lives. Like the Ignite's listed at having 17 hours of GPS battery life, but I found I was charging it every kind of few days, 2-3 days really, if using it regularly. Just got that kind of quite bright touch screen. It uses a lot of power. The Forerunner 45 similarly has 13 hours of GPS. I was charging that every 4 days, kind of on my regular training schedule. And like I say, this is more like 10 to 14 days. That's enough, really stands out. Obviously the extra connectivity you get with this watch, it will link to everything. That really impressive Stryd support's really good. It does everything you kind of want apart from that navigation feature which Coros has reserved for pricier watches. So yeah, there's not a lot really to recommend for the other watches except maybe a couple of things. Like Garmin's obviously very easy to use. There's nothing really on the 45 that isn't on here. This also has the barometric altimeter, remember. That's a really nifty bit of hardware that you usually only see in much more expensive watches. Polar does some really nice sleep tracking, sleep tracking and sleep analysis, and that links to their kind of recommended workouts that they do. I think the Ignite's a pretty good all-round fitness watch, but I think for a pure running watch, the touchscreen's a bit fiddly to use. This is just, I think, a better kind of proper running watch compared to the Ignite. And the 45 again, just lacks a few features on that are on this, so that really does, make it probably the best pick of the three, which all have a kind of similar RRP. However, the Ignite and the Forerunner 45 are often quite heavily reduced, so that might come into play, but unless you're seeing maybe the Forerunner 45 for around 120, 130 pounds, I would say probably the Pace 2 would be my pick of the trio. Both the Ignite and the Forerunner 45 aren't triathlon watches either, and the Forerunner doesn't even have open water swimming on as a mode, so I think that's obviously we're a running channel, but that's a really nifty extra feature that you get on this. This is a full triathlon watch for £180, which it's pretty unique actually with this kind of standard of tracking.
So I think it's fair to say we're all kind of in agreement that the Pace 2 is a great watch when you consider how much it costs and what other watches are around it at that price point. I would like to kind of compare with one watch which I think is worth talking about. This is the Huawei Watch GT2e. Now, myself and Nick did a video on this. I think it's more aggressively priced than the Pace 2. You can get it for kind of around £140, £150, maybe even less than that. I think it's, you've got nice materials in terms of design. You've got a kind of amazing touchscreen display and, a really good, strong kind of battery life and GPS battery life. It's a really easy watch to use. There's a lot of running modes on there. There's some nice kind of beginner features on there as well. Now, I think the big difference for me, why I would go for the Pace 2 over this, I think, you're getting some kind of richer metrics in terms of running, and crucially, you're also getting the ability to sync data to third-party apps. So things like Strava, you can do that on the Pace 2. It's very quick in terms of that syncing. With the Huawei Watch GT2e, you can't do that. The Huawei Watch GT2e is a good watch to consider, but I still think If you want a more complete running watch, that better kind of support for other apps, the Pace 2 still gets my shout.
That's it guys, that's our review of the Coros Pace 2. Please do like and subscribe and let us know in the comments below if you have any questions about the watch. Ring the little bell so you get notified next time we put up a video, and we'll see you next time.